In the rain-soaked silence, a secret billionaire feared to hear was finally spoken. A billionaire mocked a black waitress in front of a crowded room, expecting her to stay small and silent. But when she spoke, just one sharp, steady sentence, the entire table froze. No one knew her past, no one knew the truth she carried, and no one imagined those 5 quiet words would expose a secret powerful enough to topple an empire. The Harbor Lane Grill always glowed the same way at night. Soft amber lights hanging low, clinking silverware echoing across the dining room, and the faint scent of buttered garlic rolls drifting from the kitchen. It was the kind of place where wealthy businessmen felt important, and working-class folks like Maya Thompson blended into the wallpaper. Every evening she moved between tables like a quiet breeze, balancing 3 plates on one arm, a coffee pot in the other, offering gentle smiles even when no one bothered to look at her. Her coworkers admired her patience. Most customers never even noticed she had a name. But that night, the hush of the restaurant felt different. A table in the center, table 9, burst with loud laughter, the kind that tried to dominate a room. 4 men in expensive suits sat there, their voices heavy with privilege and wine. And at the head of the table sat Grant Lawson, the billionaire whose face often appeared on business magazines stacked near gas station registers. His watch alone was worth more than Maya made in a year. To her, he was just another customer to serve with kindness she refused to let the world take away from her. Maya approached with a fresh pot of coffee, doing what she always did, moving gently, carefully, hoping not to draw attention. But one of the men at the table, red-cheeked from his 3rd glass of Cabernet, nudged Grant's elbow and grinned. "Hey, Grant," he said too loudly. "You're always preaching about hearing opinions from the people, right? Let's ask her." His finger pointed at Maya like she was an object, not a person. The others laughed. Grant leaned back in his chair, amusement curling at the corner of his mouth. He lifted his gaze toward her name tag, reading her name as though it were the punchline of a joke. "So, Maya," he began, his voice dripping with mock curiosity. "Tell me, what would you do with a $10 billion merger?" More laughter. Loud, smug, careless. The kind that stung even when you pretended it didn't. Maya froze for half a second. She had heard comments like this her whole life. Subtle insults wrapped in fake politeness. Assumptions that a black woman serving tables couldn't possibly understand the world beyond tips and shifts. Usually, she swallowed the hurt, smiled, apologized for things that weren't her fault, and walked away. She needed the job too much to risk upsetting anyone. She needed the paycheck for Jordan's medicine, for the bills that piled up month after month. But something about the way Grant said it pierced deeper. Maybe it was the way the men leaned in, waiting to be entertained at her expense. Maybe it was the exhaustion from working 2 shifts back to back. Maybe it was the memory of all the times good intention had cost her more than pride. Or maybe it was the stack of papers sticking halfway out of Grant's briefcase, the numbers scribbled in red ink she recognized instantly, even from a distance. Her heart thudded. She shouldn't speak. She knew she shouldn't. Still, Maya set the coffee pot down with steady hands. Grant raised an eyebrow. "Go on," he taunted. "We're listening." For a moment, her world became painfully quiet. No clinking silverware, no murmured conversations, no soft jazz humming in the background. Just her breath, the snickers of wealthy men, and a decision she could no longer swallow. Maya straightened, her voice calm, too calm for someone being mocked. "You're about to lose everything," she said. The table went dead silent. Every fork paused mid-air. One of the men choked slightly on his wine. Even the background music felt like it faded away. Grant blinked slowly, caught completely off guard. "What did you just say?" Her eyes didn't waver. She didn't apologize. She didn't step back. For the first time all night, She let herself be seen. "You're about to lose everything," Maya repeated, her voice low but unwavering, each word slicing through the golden quiet of the restaurant like a knife. And with that sentence, the air shifted. The laughter died, replaced by something colder, curiosity mixed with a hint of fear. Grant leaned forward, the amusement wiped clean from his face. Behind Maya, the kitchen door swung open, spilling warm light across the floor. But she didn't flinch. Not this time. Because in one reckless moment of truth, she had changed both of their lives forever. By the time her shift ended, the Harbor Lane Grill had settled back into its usual rhythm. The wealthy men at Table 9 spoke in hushed tones now, glancing in her direction with something that wasn't quite fear, but wasn't arrogance anymore either. Grant Lawson kept staring at her, not with the smug amusement he'd shown earlier, but with the kind of look a man wears when the ground under his feet begins to crack. He didn't call her back to the table. Not yet. But Maya could feel it. Something had shifted, like the tide changing direction without warning. She slipped into the employee's room, hung up her apron, and washed her hands slowly, watching the brownish water swirl down the drain. Her reflection in the metal paper towel dispenser looked tired. The kind of tired that didn't come from a long shift, but from years of carrying burdens too heavy for one set of shoulders. She inhaled shakily. What had she done? Speaking like that to a billionaire wasn't bravery. It was foolish, dangerous. But deep inside, beneath the fear, a small spark glowed. A spark she hadn't felt in a long time. Truth. She had spoken the truth, and even though her voice had been steady, her heart was trembling now. Outside, the night air was crisp, the kind that bit through thin jackets and seeped into your bones. Maya pulled her hood up and made her way down Preston Street, heading toward the row of old brick buildings where she lived. Streetlights flickered dimly. A bus groaned past, rattling windows. Somewhere in the alley, a trash can toppled over, scattering bottles that clinked like broken memories. West Preston wasn't the kind of place where dreams were born. It was where dreams limped to rest. Maya climbed the narrow staircase to her apartment, stepping carefully to avoid the spot on the second step that always wobbled. Before she could unlock the door, it swung open from the inside. Jordan stood there, thin and pale in an oversized hoodie. His smile lit up the hallway. "You're home," he said, relief softening his voice. "I stayed awake for you." She smiled back, brushing her hand over his cheek. "You should be resting." "I napped. Twice." He leaned against the doorframe. "You ate?" "I'm fine," she whispered, though her stomach had been empty since lunch. "How was your breathing today?" Jordan hesitated. That was enough to tell her the truth. She felt her chest tighten. His medication was running low again, and she hadn't figured out how to pay for the refill. Inside their apartment, a warm glow from a thrift store lamp filled the living room. Every piece of furniture was secondhand. Mismatched chairs, a sagging couch, a chipped coffee table. But Maya kept everything clean, organized, and welcoming. The walls were sprinkled with photos of her and Jordan, smiling at the inner harbor, holding grocery bags together, celebrating Jordan's last birthday with a dollar store candle stuck in a slice of boxed cake. She slipped off her shoes and hung her jacket. "Did Miss Ruby bring you dinner?" "She did," Jordan nodded. "She said she saw you help Mr. Collins carry groceries yesterday. She said you have a heart made of gold." Maya looked down, the compliment warming her like a blanket. Miss Ruby was nearly 70 and lived 2 doors down. Maya checked on her most evenings, making sure she didn't slip on the stairs or trip over loose rugs. People didn't talk about it much, but in neighborhoods like West Preston, kindness was the only real currency. Jordan sank onto the couch, turning the TV on low. Some late-night music show flickered softly. "How was work tonight?" Maya hesitated. She thought about lying, about brushing off what happened as just another shift. But Jordan always saw through her. Always. "Strange," she finally said, sinking beside him. "Some very wealthy people came in. And? And one of them made a joke. At my expense." She tried to make her tone light, but Jordan's eyes sharpened with concern. "What did you say back?" he asked. She exhaled. "More than I should have." Jordan blinked. "Maya." "I know," she said quickly. "I know. I shouldn't have opened my mouth, but sometimes when people think they know you, think they can box you into some tiny corner, it makes something inside you break open." Jordan touched her hand gently. "You're the strongest person I know." "Strength doesn't pay bills," she whispered, her voice catching. "Strength doesn't buy medicine." Silence settled between them, soft and heavy. After a while, Jordan yawned and leaned his head on her shoulder. "You always help everyone, Maya. Even when nobody helps you. I wish people knew how smart you are." She kissed the top of his head. "I don't need them to know." But a part of her wished someone, anyone, would see past the apron, the tired eyes, the neighborhood address. Someone who would see the woman she used to be, before the world took everything from her. Jordan drifted to sleep. Maya pulled a blanket over him, then slipped to the small window beside their tiny kitchen. She watched the distant lights of downtown Baltimore shimmer against the water. Somewhere in one of those tall glass towers, decisions were made that could shake entire companies, entire lives. And earlier that night, she had looked a man from that world in the eye and told him he was standing on a collapsing foundation. She didn't know why she saw the errors in those documents so clearly. Maybe it was old instincts waking up. Maybe it was a curse, being able to see danger where others saw opportunity. Or maybe it was a chance to fix something after years of carrying the weight of a mistake that wasn't hers. She pressed her forehead against the cool glass. "Why did I see it?" she whispered. "Why me?" Outside, a siren wailed in the distance. The streetlights buzzed faintly. A cold wind rattled the loose window frame. And in that quiet sliver of night, Maya felt a new fear creep into her chest. Fear not of the wealthy men who mocked her, not of the world that overlooked her, but of the truth she'd spoken so boldly. Because people like Grant Lawson didn't let things go. And Maya Thompson had just told him something he could not ignore. By morning, the sky over Baltimore had turned a pale gray, the kind that made the whole city look tired. Heavy clouds rolled above the rooftops as Maya walked down the block toward the bus stop, her breath visible in the cold air. She had barely slept. Every time she closed her eyes, she heard her own voice echoing back at her. "You're about to lose everything." It had been foolish. Brave, maybe, but foolish. She kept trying to convince herself that the men at table 9 would forget about her, that they would laugh it off, chalk it up to a waitress having a bad day. But she knew better. People like them didn't forget, especially not men like Grant Lawson. She hugged her coat tighter around her as the bus screeched to a stop. The vehicle exhaled warm steam as passengers stepped off, faces groggy and half awake. Maya boarded, tapping her card and choosing a seat near the back. She watched the city blur past. Graffitied brick walls, boarded-up groceries, kids walking to school with backpacks too big for their shoulders. She wondered how many of them had dreams bigger than their zip code would allow. At Harbor Lane Grill, the morning shift was already in motion. Coffee brewing, spatulas clattering, cooks yelling short commands like an orchestra of kitchen chaos. Maya tied her apron, hiding the tremor in her hands. She hoped no one from last night's incident was here today. But halfway to the dining room, she froze. The maitre d', a slim man named Charles, hurried toward her with eyes wide. Maya, he whispered sharply. Don't go out there yet. Her stomach dropped. Why? Because he's here. Who? Charles swallowed. The billionaire from last night. The room seemed to tilt. Maya gripped the back of a chair to steady herself. Why would he come back? She hadn't expected to ever see him again, not outside the pages of a magazine or a TV interview. Certainly not at the restaurant where she scraped tips together. Before she could gather her breath, Charles added, "And he asked for you by name." Her heart thudded painfully. "Charles, I can't—" But it was too late. A shadow appeared at the entry of the service hallway, tall and sharply dressed, his presence commanding even in the soft morning light. Grant Lawson stood there, hands in the pockets of a dark wool coat, eyes fixed on her like she was the only person in the room. "Maya Thompson," he said, his voice low, but unmistakably firm. A word. Every head in the restaurant turned. Conversations stopped mid-sentence. Forks hovered above plates. Maya felt as though her feet had rooted to the floor. She forced herself forward, each step heavier than the last. When she reached him, she managed a soft, "Sir, Outside," he said simply. Cold air rushed in as he held the door open. Maya followed, hesitantly, her mind spinning with possibilities. Maybe he wanted an apology. Maybe he'd come to insult her again. Or worse. Maybe he'd spoken to the wrong person. The kind who could make her life harder than it already was. They stepped onto the sidewalk, where the morning breeze carried the faint scent of the harbor. Grant studied her for a long moment, his expression unreadable. "You said something last night," he finally began. "Something you shouldn't have known." Maya clasped her hands to hide their shaking. "I shouldn't have said anything. I apologize. It won't happen again. I'm not asking for an apology." Her words died in her throat. Grant continued, his tone shifting from stern to strangely unsettled. "Tell me how you knew." Maya blinked. "Sir, I didn't mean to." "How did you know?" he repeated, quieter this time, like a man pleading for truth he couldn't ignore. She should have lied, told him it was a guess, a coincidence, anything to push him away. But lies had cost her too much already. "I recognized the numbers," she finally said. "On the papers in your briefcase." His brow furrowed. "You saw them? From across the room?" "I used to work with data. I'm not just a waitress." Her voice faltered, heavy with the humiliation of having to explain herself. Grant stared at her, disbelief flickering across his face. "You understood the merger documents." She nodded. "And what you said? You truly believe this deal is compromised?" "I don't know the whole picture," she whispered. "But something is wrong. Very wrong." Wind rustled through the street, lifting a few stray leaves at their feet. For the first time since she'd met him, Grant Lawson didn't look like a man in control. He looked like someone standing at the edge of a cliff, realizing the ground beneath him might not be solid. "Maya," he said slowly, "this merger, if what you're saying is true, it could ruin me. My entire company." She dropped her gaze. "That's why I said something. I wasn't trying to embarrass you." Grant exhaled, running a hand through his hair. "And you're sure?" "No," she admitted, "but I'm sure something is off." The tension between them stretched like a wire drawn too tight. Then he stepped closer. "I need you to explain it," he said. "Not here, not on a sidewalk, in my office." Maya's breath hitched. "Your office? You saw something my entire analytics team missed." "Sir, I can't just leave work. Already handled." He nodded toward the restaurant windows. Sure enough, Charles was talking rapidly to the manager, who looked pale as he read the note Grant had handed him earlier. "You're off for the day." Maya's pulse raced. Everything inside her screamed that this was dangerous, not physically, but emotionally, like stepping back into a world that had once crushed her. Grant opened the car door of the sleek black SUV idling at the curb. "Get in the car," he said softly. "Now." The exact same words he'd spoken the night before. But this time, they weren't a threat. They were a request wrapped in urgency. Maya hesitated, her mind torn between fear and something else, something like a sliver of hope she didn't dare name. Behind her, the restaurant lights glowed warm and familiar. Ahead of her waited the unknown, a step into a world she had sworn she'd never re-enter. She closed her eyes for a heartbeat. Then she stepped into the SUV. The door shut with a quiet thud that felt like the turning of a key, unlocking a path she couldn't yet see. As the car pulled away from the curb, Maya watched the restaurant fade from view. The place that had hidden her for years shrinking into the background. Whatever waited next, answers, danger, or the truth she'd tried so hard to bury, was now in motion, and there was no turning back. Maya sat rigidly in the back seat of the black SUV as it rolled through the morning traffic. Raindrops streaked down the windows, turning the city outside into a watercolor blur. Gray sidewalks, flickering neon signs, people clutching umbrellas as they hurried down the street. The hum of the engine was steady, almost soothing. But inside her chest everything felt loud and unsettled. She kept her hands clasped in her lap, knuckles white. Up front, Grant Lawson was silent. His eyes were fixed on the road ahead, jaw tight, as if every thought in his head was fighting for space. His driver occasionally glanced at the rearview mirror, as though trying to understand why a billionaire CEO had a waitress in the back seat of his car. But he didn't ask questions. No one who worked for Grant dared to. After several quiet miles, Grant finally spoke, though he didn't turn around. "Tell me exactly what you saw." His voice was calm, but there was a strain beneath it, a tension Maya recognized. People in power rarely asked for help unless something was slipping out of their control. Maya swallowed. "It was just a glimpse, sir. Maybe a second or two." "But enough to recognize the pattern?" he pressed. I used to work with risk models," she admitted. "Financial projections, fraud detection, anomaly reports." His gaze flickered to the mirror. "Used to?" The words sat heavy between them. Maya hesitated, unsure how much to reveal. Rain hammered harder against the roof of the SUV, and the city lights reflected through the drops like tiny trembling stars. She picked at the frayed edge of her coat sleeve before answering. "I lost my job 2 years ago," she said quietly. "I was accused of something I didn't do." Grant didn't interrupt. He simply listened. "I flagged an internal irregularity at the firm," she continued. "Turned out the irregularity belonged to someone higher up. They needed someone to blame, someone easy to replace. So they fired me, blacklisted me. I couldn't get another job in finance after that." She blinked, breath tightening in her chest. "I lost everything." The driver's eyes softened in the rearview mirror. Grant, however, remained still, thinking. "And the numbers in my paperwork," he said, "looked like the same type of irregularity you once flagged." "It's not just the numbers," Maya said, leaning forward slightly. "It's the timing, the structure, and the signature." That made him turn around. "The signature?" "One of your senior executives," Maya whispered. It looked like Andrea Mills's approval tag, but the timestamp pattern wasn't hers. It was off, maybe forged. For a split second, something like alarm flashed across Grant's features. "Maya," he said slowly, "I need you to understand something. The merger we're preparing. This is the biggest deal Lawson Tech has attempted in 20 years. If someone inside is manipulating numbers or hiding risks, his voice trailed off. His empire could crumble. How long has the paperwork looked suspicious to you? Maya asked softly. Long enough that I should have trusted my instinct, he admitted. But everyone kept telling me I was being paranoid, Andrea especially. The SUV slowed as they approached the financial district. Rain glistened on the towering glass buildings like silver veins. The streets were lined with umbrellas and coffee cups, people rushing in and out of revolving doors. It was the world Maya had once belonged to, and the world that had spit her out without remorse. Grant took a long breath, still facing her. Why did you say something, Maya? Most people would have kept their head down. Let me walk into disaster. Her eyes drifted toward the window. They passed a homeless man wrapped in blankets under a bus shelter. A young mother pushing a stroller while shielding the baby from the cold rain. A teenage boy holding a backpack together with duct tape. All my life, she murmured, people told me I didn't matter, that someone like me shouldn't speak up, and I believed them, for a long time. She met his eyes. But last night, I just didn't want to see someone get hurt because I stayed quiet. Grant watched her for a moment that felt too long, his expression unreadable. Then he tapped twice on the divider. Take us to headquarters. The driver nodded. Maya's heartbeat quickened. She leaned back, her breath uneven. Sir, I don't think that's... You're the only person who's given me a straight answer in months, Grant said sharply. We're going to my office and you're going to show me exactly what you saw. Maya stared at the raindrops sliding down the glass. Every instinct she had was screaming at her to run, to get off at the next light, to protect herself from stepping into the world that had once destroyed her. But then she remembered Jordan, her little brother waiting at home, his chest tight every night, struggling to breathe without medication they could barely afford. She remembered the eviction notices tucked under their door, the groceries she had to ration, the guilt she carried like a stone. Maybe this wasn't danger. Maybe this was the chance she'd thought she'd never get again. The SUV stopped at a red light. Outside, a woman slipped on the wet sidewalk, her grocery bag spilling. Without thinking, Maya reached for the door handle. Wait, Grant said, startled. Maya didn't. She stepped out into the rain, hurried over, and helped the woman gather her things. The woman thanked her through shivering lips, and Maya smiled softly before returning to the SUV. As she climbed back in, drenched from the brief downpour, Grant watched her with something new in his eyes. Respect. Not just curiosity. Respect. The SUV accelerated again, turning toward the tallest building in the district, a tower that pierced the low clouds like a blade of light. Lawson Tech headquarters, a place Maya never thought she would see again. When the car rolled to a stop at the entrance, Grant looked back at her one more time. This, he said quietly, might get complicated. Maya exhaled, wiping rain from her forehead. My whole life is complicated, sir. He gave a faint, almost reluctant smile. Let's get to work. And with that, they stepped out into the storm, heading toward a truth neither of them were ready for, but both of them desperately needed. Rain battered the pavement in angry sheets as Grant pushed open the glass doors of Lawson Tech headquarters. The lobby was cavernous, marble floors glowing gold beneath towering chandeliers, security guards standing like silent statues, and floor-to-ceiling windows framing the storm outside like a living painting. At this late hour, the building felt too quiet, too still, like a giant holding its breath. Maya kept close behind him, her soaked jacket dripping onto the polished floor. She felt out of place, painfully aware of her damp sneakers squeaking with each step. But she kept her chin up. If she shrank now, she would never stop shrinking. The elevator attendant blinked in surprise when he saw her. "Evening, Mr. Lawson," the man said, his voice stiff. "Working late?" "Very," Grant replied. "Top floor." The attendant pressed the button, stealing confused glances at Maya, as though trying to understand who she was and why she was here. The elevator doors slid open with a soft chime, and the two of them stepped inside. As the car began its silent rise, Maya's heartbeat sped up. The numbers above the door climbed, 12, 24, 37, each one a reminder that she was entering a world that once spit her out. When they reached the top floor, the elevator opened to a long hallway lined with glass offices. Everything gleamed: chrome, glass, brushed steel. The hum of servers filled the air like a soft mechanical heartbeat. Maya had seen this kind of environment for years, but never from this side of the building, the executive level, where decisions were made behind closed doors and guarded smiles. Grant led her toward a massive corner office. The door bore his name in etched silver: Grant Lawson, Chief Executive Officer. He pushed it open. Inside, the office felt like its own world, city lights spilling through two-story windows, casting long shadows across the floor. Shelves lined with awards, framed articles, and models of Lawson Tech innovations stretched along the walls. In the middle sat a sleek glass desk, glowing faintly under a desk lamp. But they weren't alone. A woman was sitting on the edge of Grant's desk, arms folded, expression ice-cold. Andrea Mills, her perfectly styled blonde hair framed a face carved from disdain. Her crimson lipstick formed a sharp line as her gaze landed on Maya. "Well," Andrea said slowly, sliding off the desk, "I didn't believe it until I saw it." Grant stiffened. "Andrea, what are you doing here?" "Working late," she replied, walking toward them. Her heels clicked sharply on the floor. "Which is more than I can say for most of the finance team these days. Apparently, they're too busy chasing ghosts." Her eyes flicked to Maya, taking in the damp clothes, the tired eyes, the hooded jacket. "A waitress?" Andrea murmured. "In the executive suite, at midnight." She smirked. "Is this casual philanthropy, Grant? Or have we lowered hiring standards since I left 2 hours ago?" Maya inhaled, steady but firm. She knew that tone. She'd heard it from board members, analysts, managers, the kind of people who saw anyone outside their world as disposable. But tonight, she refused to fold. Grant stepped forward. "She's here because she saw something I need to verify." Andrea arched an eyebrow. "Saw something? What exactly would a waitress see in documents she has no security clearance for?" Her tone dripped with condescension. Before Grant could respond, Andrea continued. "Unless, of course, she's lying." The accusation sliced through the room. Maya's breath hitched, not from guilt, but from memory. 2 years ago, she had stood in a conference room just like this one, accused, cornered, silenced. The flashback hit so hard she nearly stepped back. Grant shot Andrea a glare. "Enough. You don't know what she saw." "No," Andrea replied slowly, her lips curling. "But I do know what I saw. And it certainly wasn't any irregularities in the merger file." Her eyes sharpened. "Maybe you're the one being manipulated." Maya stepped forward before fear could choke her voice. "I'm not lying." Andrea turned slightly, looking at her with amusement. "Sweetheart, you don't belong here." Grant slammed a folder on the desk, making both women jump. "Andrea, she's not lying. I saw the file myself. The timestamp data was off." Andrea's expression flickered, barely, but enough for Maya to notice. "Oh?" she said, her voice turning delicate, almost mocking. "And you've decided to trust her? Based on what, exactly?" Grant didn't hesitate. "Based on the fact that she has nothing to gain." That silenced the room. A soft rumble of thunder echoed through the windows. The storm outside intensified, lightning flashing against the glass tower like warning signs from another world. Andrea recovered quickly. She crossed her arms and leaned against the desk again. "All right," she said coolly. "Then let her explain herself." Her gaze sharpened. "Explain how she just happened to understand complex financial irregularities after working as— What was your title?" "Ah, yes. Server." Maya lifted her chin. She felt the old ache inside her, the wound left by betrayal and humiliation. But this time she refused to let it swallow her. "I used to be a risk analyst," Maya said. "I worked in financial compliance and fraud detection." Andrea's eyes widened for a fraction of a second before she forced a laugh. "Used to? You expect me to believe that? If you were any good, you'd still be in the industry." Maya swallowed hard but didn't look away. "I was falsely accused." Her voice steadied. "Someone needed a scapegoat." Andrea's face flickered again, fear buried under arrogance. But Maya caught it. And so did Grant. "Maya," Grant said quietly, "show me what you saw in the file." She moved toward the desk, her hands trembling slightly, not from weakness, but from the weight of stepping back into the world that had once destroyed her. But she laid her fingertips on the documents, flipping them open to the pages she remembered. The irregular structures, the forged timestamps, the suspicious approval codes. Andrea watched, tense. Maya circled one section with Grant's pen. "Right here. This isn't standard signature sequencing. And here, this part is structured exactly like a known laundering shell model. One I flagged 2 years ago at my old job." Lightning flashed across the window, a bright, stark white that illuminated the shock on Grant's face and the fury on Andrea's. Andrea stepped forward, fists clenched. "This waitress—" "Enough," Grant snapped. "She knows what she's talking about." Andrea's jaw tightened. She looked at Maya with something deeper than disdain now. Fear. "Grant," she said slowly, carefully, "she's lying, and I can prove it." Silence fell like a stone dropped in deep water. Grant stared at her. "Prove it, then." Andrea smiled, a thin, dangerous smile. "With pleasure." And Maya felt the floor shift under her feet as a new reality settled in. This wasn't just about a merger anymore. It was about exposing the person who had once torn her life apart. And the storm outside was nothing compared to the one now forming inside Lawson Tech. By morning, the entire 50th floor throbbed with tension. The storm that had pounded the glass tower overnight had rolled east, leaving behind a cold gray sky and streets slick with rain. But inside, a different kind of weather brewed. Silent, charged, waiting to break. Word traveled fast in buildings like this, and nothing traveled faster than a secret discovered at midnight. As Maya stepped out of the elevator, conversations hushed, eyes darted. Employees bent over cubicles suddenly found the carpet interesting. She felt the weight of their curiosity pressing against her, scraping old wounds awake. The last time she'd walked into a corporate office after an accusation, whispers had followed her exactly like this. Sticky, clinging, impossible to outrun. But this time was different. This time she wasn't alone. Grant Lawson strode beside her, suit immaculate, expression carved from granite. Even the security guards straightened when he passed. He didn't speak as they approached the large conference room dedicated to the merger review team. But Maya could feel the tension radiating off him like heat from asphalt. When they entered, a dozen heads turned. Analysts, legal advisors, senior accountants. They all froze. And then, like a wave receding, they silently drifted back into their seats. On the far side of the room, Andrea Mills stood rigid, her arms crossed so tightly it looked painful. Her eyes were rimmed with fatigue, though her makeup fought hard to hide it. She spoke before Grant could. "Grant, we need to talk privately." He didn't slow. "No, we're doing this here." A ripple of shock spread across the room. Grant dropped a folder on the table. I want every transaction Andrea handled in the last 6 months pulled and audited today. Every approval code, every timestamp, every signature. One of the analysts choked on his coffee. Andrea's voice sharpened like shattered ice. You can't be serious. I'm very serious, he replied. You're letting her, Andrea hissed, chin jerking toward Maya, dictate internal protocol? Are you out of your mind? Grant's gaze hardened. This isn't about her. This is about the integrity of a deal worth $10 billion. If something's wrong, I need to know now. Andrea's composure cracked. It was subtle, barely a twitch of her jaw, a flicker of panic in her eyes, but Maya saw it. She knew that look. She had seen it years ago in the faces of those who had framed her. Guilt and fear. The analysts immediately began typing, screens flickering to life with rows of numbers and encrypted signatures. The hum of work filled the room. While they dug into the data, Maya slipped out quietly. The space felt suffocating, too familiar, too dangerous. She needed air. The corridor outside was empty, save for a janitor hunched over a supply cart. A middle-aged man with tired eyes and shoulders that slumped under the weight of life's slow erosion. He was pushing a heavy trash bin toward the service elevator when he suddenly wobbled. Maya saw it before it happened. The way his hand trembled, the way his breath stuttered. Sir? She called gently. He didn't answer. He stumbled sideways, hitting the wall with a dull thud. Without hesitation, Maya rushed forward. Hey, sit down, slowly. He tried to wave her off, mumbling, I'm fine, just need a minute. But his lips were pale, his forehead slick with sweat. Maya had cared for Jordan through countless emergencies. She knew the signs of fainting when she saw them. Please sit, she insisted, guiding him toward a nearby chair. Tilt your head down a little. Breathe. The man obeyed, trembling. Didn't eat breakfast, he muttered. Double shift. Thought I could push through. Maya glanced around. Nobody else seemed to notice. Office workers streamed past, too busy or too self-important to slow down. The scene was painfully familiar. People like him, people like her, always invisible in places like this. She crouched in front of him. I'll get you water. As she hurried to a break room, she caught a pair of security guards whispering at the end of the hallway. One of them said, I heard Andrea called someone this morning. She sounded scared. His partner lowered his voice. Scared? Or caught? The words followed Maya like footsteps. She returned with a bottle of water and a protein bar swiped from the counter. The janitor took them with shaking hands. Thank you, he murmured. You didn't have to. I know, Maya said, smiling softly. That's why I did. The man blinked, eyes glistening. Better be careful. People don't like kindness in places like this. Makes them uncomfortable. The truth of that sat heavy inside her chest. Before she could answer, a voice cut down the hallway. There you are. Maya turned. Grant stood behind her, slightly breathless. I was looking for you, he said. Then he noticed the janitor. Is everything all right? He's okay, Maya said. Just needed a moment. Grant nodded, surprised but respectful. Good. Come with me. She rose, giving the janitor's shoulder a reassuring squeeze before following Grant back toward the conference room. He didn't speak until they were alone in the hallway. You didn't have to help him, Grant said quietly. Maybe not, Maya replied. But it was the right thing to do. He studied her with a strange expression, something like realization softening the edges of his usually guarded face. I see why your brother admires you, he said at last. Maya froze. How? You mentioned him on the phone last week when your shift ended, Grant said. I remember things that matter. Her breath caught. Nobody ever remembered details about her life. Not bosses, not coworkers, not people in power. Before she could find a response, the conference room doors flew open. One of the analysts rushed out, pale. Mr. Lawson, you need to see this." Grant and Maya exchanged a glance. Inside, the screens showed dozens of red flags, inconsistent codes, altered timestamp logs, missing cross-approvals, and in the center of it all, every irregularity traced back to Andrea. Andrea stood in the corner, stiff as a statue. Her face had drained of all color. Grant's voice dropped to a dangerous calm. "Andrea, is there something you want to explain?" Andrea swallowed, but her voice came out smooth, practiced. "Grant, these files were obviously tampered with. Someone is setting me up." Grant nodded once, slowly. "Funny, because that is exactly what Maya told me 2 years ago someone did to her." Andrea's eyes flashed with pure dread. And in that moment, Maya realized something chilling. Andrea wasn't scared of losing her job. She was scared of the truth that Maya had carried like a wound for years. Because Andrea wasn't just hiding a mistake. She was hiding her involvement. And someone inside Lawson Tech was about to expose it. From the far end of the room, a security guard leaned toward Maya and whispered, "She made a call this morning," she said. "We have a problem." His voice trembled. She wasn't talking about the merger. Maya's stomach tightened. No, she thought. She was talking about me. And for the first time since this nightmare began 2 years ago, Maya felt the ground tilt, not beneath her, but beneath the woman who had tried to destroy her. The crack in the empire had begun to split open. But cracks, Maya knew, didn't open by themselves. Pressure opened them. Secrets opened them. And sometimes, truth had to be dragged out of the dark. By late afternoon, Maya found herself sitting alone in a small break room on the 49th floor, her hands cupped around a paper coffee cup that had long since gone cold. The hum of the refrigerator, the soft clinks from distant cubicles, the muted city roar beyond the windows. Normally, all of it would calm her. Today, it felt like a warning. Her heart was still racing from the confrontation. The way Andrea's facade had crumbled, the way Grant's eyes had narrowed. Maya sensed that this wasn't over, not even close. Her mind drifted, unwanted, uninvited, back to that night 2 years ago, the night everything she had built came crashing down. She'd been the last one in the office, finishing a report no one else wanted to touch. She remembered the overheated conference room, the flickering lights, the way her gut twisted as she spotted discrepancies in one of the expense logs, discrepancies tied to a senior manager. She'd written a quiet flag, a private alert, something small, something procedural. The next morning, she'd been escorted out in front of the entire department, accused of willfully falsifying data. Andrea hadn't been there physically, but she'd been the name behind the email, the one Maya had never forgotten. Now, in the bright artificial light of Lawson Tech's break room, that memory flashed like a scar being brushed too hard. Maya rubbed her forehead, trying to force the vision away. A soft voice pulled her back. "You all right?" She looked up. It was Grace, one of the junior analysts, the youngest person on the merger team, with thick glasses and a nervous smile. She'd barely spoken during meetings earlier, but now she stood in the doorway, holding a folder against her chest. "You disappeared for a while," Grace said awkwardly. "Mr. Lawson wanted you to have this." Maya straightened. "Thank you." Grace stepped inside, lowering her voice. "Everyone's talking about the audit. About Andrea." Maya tensed, but Grace held up a hand. "Not in a bad way. Just surprised." Her gaze softened with something like admiration. "You know, most people wouldn't have said anything last night. Not to him. Not to a table full of billionaires." Maya attempted a smile. "Most days I wouldn't have either." Grace hesitated, shifting her weight. For what it's worth, I think you're doing the right thing. Then she hurried out, leaving Maya alone again, but lighter somehow. She opened the folder Grace had delivered. Inside were printed audits, flagged transactions, and notes from the accounting team. But something else slipped out from between the pages. A sticky note, handwritten. Check signature ID logs. Irregular packet trail. NB. Nathan Brooks, one of the senior investigators. A man with a reputation for being relentless, humorless, and incorruptible. The fact that he left a note for her, someone who technically wasn't even employed here, sent a jolt through her chest. She gathered the papers, suddenly needing quiet. Real quiet. She wandered down the hallway until she found a storage room, unused, dusty, quiet enough that her own breath sounded loud. She closed the door behind her and sank to the floor, spreading the documents across an old rolling cart. Numbers, codes, timestamps. They blurred into a familiar language, a language she thought she'd lost. Her fingers paused on one particular signature block. Something about it tugged at her memory, an approval trail she remembered from her old job. A trail that had been altered then, and again now. Her pulse quickened. She reached into her backpack, fingers brushing against old fabric, until they found a hidden zipper. Inside was a worn-out leather pouch she hadn't touched since the night she lost her career. Her hands trembled as she unzipped it. Inside was a small, scratched USB drive. Her heart thudded. The last piece of her past. The only thing she'd managed to grab before security dragged her from the office 2 years ago. She hadn't dared plug it in since. It held too much pain, too much fear, too much truth. But today, truth mattered. With a shaky breath, she slid the USB into her phone's OTG adapter, praying the files weren't corrupted. The screen blinked. One folder, labeled Evidence, Read Later. Her breath hitched. She tapped it open. 3 files. One was a raw data report. Proof she had flagged irregularities in her old company's accounts. Proof she had been framed. Another was an encrypted transaction string, similar to the patterns in Lawson Tech's merger. But the third, a small audio file. Her fingertips froze. No, it couldn't be. She pressed play. A woman's voice filled the storage room, sharp and unmistakable. Andrea. Just pin it on her, the recording hissed. She's naive. She won't fight back. And if she does, she has no power to win. Maya's vision blurred. The storage room tilted. She covered her mouth with her hand, feeling a tremor rush through her from head to toe. Her throat tightened painfully. This was it. Proof. Finally. Merciless. Clear. Andrea hadn't just wronged Maya. She'd destroyed her. Tears slipped down Maya's cheeks. Quiet tears. Not of weakness, but of release, of grief, of vindication. Her whole body shook with a strange mixture of pain and victory. She replayed the recording again, then again. Each time the words carved deeper into her memory, like stitches closing an old wound. The door creaked suddenly. Maya jumped, spinning, around. Grant stood there, eyes narrowing with concern. He took a step toward her, seeing her shaking hands, her tear-streaked face. Maya, he said softly, what did you find? She couldn't speak, not yet. Instead, she held up the phone. Grant glanced at the screen, then at her eyes, and slowly reached out to take the device. When he pressed play, the voice filled the room. Andrea's voice. As the recording echoed off the metal shelves, Grant's jaw locked. His hands tightened. By the time the clip ended, his expression was no longer confused or cautious. It was fury. Controlled, focused fury. Maya, he whispered. This, this changes everything. She wiped her face, breathing shakily. There's more. Data reports. The original flags I sent. She buried all of it. Grant exhaled hard, grounding himself before he spoke again. We're bringing this to the board. Maya blinked, heart pounding. Today? Right now, he said. The longer we wait, the more damage she can do. He offered her his hand. Not as a billionaire, not as a CEO, but as someone who finally saw her. Maya, he said, are you ready? She stared at his hand for a long moment. Then she nodded and took it. The past that once destroyed her was no longer a weight she had to carry. Now, it was her weapon. And for the first time in 2 years, she felt the world shift, not against her, but toward justice. The elevator doors slid open onto the executive level with a soft chime, but the tension inside Maya's chest was anything but soft. Grant strode ahead, purposeful, a storm contained in a tailored suit. Maya followed close behind, clutching the folder of evidence so tightly the edges dug into her palms. The boardroom loomed at the end of the hallway like a silent threat. Frosted glass, heavy oak frame, the kind of doors meant to intimidate even seasoned executives. Through the glass, silhouettes shifted. Raised voices leaked through in muted tones. They hadn't even entered, and Maya could already feel the scrutiny. The air vibrated with the weight of decisions, egos, money, all the things that once crushed her. Grant paused with his hand on the door handle. His voice was low, steady. Whatever happens in there, remember this. You're not alone anymore. The words struck a place deep inside her, a place she'd kept barricaded for years. She nodded, unable to trust her voice. Grant pushed open the doors. Inside, the room was a cathedral of polished power. Long glass table, ergonomic leather chairs, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the harbor. 11 board members turned as one, their expressions ranging from irritation to confusion to thinly veiled disdain. At the head of the table stood Andrea Mills. Her smile was brittle, stretched too tight. Grant, she said sweetly, we were just discussing your guest. Grant moved to his seat, unbuttoning his jacket. Good. Then we won't waste time. A board member with silver hair, Mr. Rockwell by his nameplate, leaned forward. We received your message. Something about irregularities. Andrea jumped in before Grant could speak. A misunderstanding, she said crisply. One that has been blown far out of proportion. Her glare flicked toward Maya like a knife. Another board member, Ms. Patel, raised an eyebrow. And who exactly is the woman with you, Mr. Lawson? The question rang louder than intended. Eyes narrowed. A couple of members whispered. Maya Thompson, Grant said, voice firm. She identified structural inconsistencies in the merger documents. Maya felt the heat of every gaze land on her, heavy and judging. But she stood straighter. Andrea let out a delicate laugh. A waitress? Consulting on a $10 billion deal? Grant, this is absurd. Several heads nodded. Grant didn't flinch. Absurd is ignoring a potential breach of integrity because it came from someone you underestimate. A murmur rippled around the table. Andrea's smile faltered. Grant motioned toward Maya. Show them. Her heart pounded, but she stepped forward, placing the folder on the table. Her voice, though soft, carried. These are the sections of the documents that were altered. The signatures don't match the timestamp logic. The sequencing is inconsistent with Lawson Tech protocols, and the approval codes were recycled from unrelated transactions. She pointed to the charts and signatures she had circled, explaining each anomaly with precise clarity. As she spoke, silence thickened. The board members leaned in, studying every detail. Andrea's jaw tightened. Her eyes sharpened with panic. That proves nothing, she snapped. Those could have been manipulated. By anyone. Grant reached across the table, retrieving the USB from Maya. There's more. Andrea stiffened. Grant. He plugged the device into the boardroom laptop. The screen flickered. Then a file loaded. A simple label. Audio to AW001. Maya's stomach flipped as he pressed play. Andrea's voice filled the room, sharp and unmistakably damning. Just pin it on her. She's naive. She won't fight back. And if she does, she has no power to win. The room erupted. Board members turned toward Andrea with disbelief and disgust. She stumbled back a step, her face blanching. That's taken out of context, she cried. Really? Ms. Patel's voice trembled with anger. It sounded very clear to me. Rockwell slammed his hand on the table. You framed an employee? And hid financial fraud on top of it? Andrea's composure crumbled. I didn't. This isn't. Grant's voice cut through the chaos like a blade. You nearly destroyed our merger. You damaged this company, and you destroyed an innocent woman's career to save yourself. Maya felt her breath catch. The truth she'd begged people to believe, was finally being spoken aloud. Andrea's eyes darted desperately around the room, looking for someone, anyone who would defend her. No one moved. Her lips trembled. You don't understand what she did nothing wrong, Grant snapped. For the first time since Maya had met him, Grant's anger wasn't concealed behind executive calm. It was raw, personal. Andrea took a shaky step back. This isn't over. Security appeared at the doorway. 2 men in dark uniforms, summoned silently by a gesture from Grant. Andrea's voice dropped to a whisper, thick with dread. You don't know the whole story. The words chilled the room, but the guards took her by the arms, escorting her out. Her heels scraped loudly on the floor, punctuating her fall from power with every step. Silence hung heavy after the door closed. Slowly, every board member turned toward Maya, no longer with skepticism, but with something else. Respect, curiosity, and discomfort. Because truth, when spoken by someone they'd dismissed, often hurt more than lies. Grant looked at her, his expression softer now, pride pulling at the corner of his mouth. Maya, he said, you just saved Lawson Tech. She swallowed hard. The weight of the moment pressed in on her, not crushing, but lifting. For the first time in years, she felt seen, heard, vindicated. But deep inside, another feeling pulsed beneath the relief. This wasn't the end of her fight. It was only the beginning. The hallway outside the boardroom buzzed faintly with distant voices, the hum of printers, the muted ring of office phones. But inside Maya's head, there was only the echo of Andrea's final words. You don't know the whole story. That sentence clung to her like a cold hand gripping the back of her neck. Grant motioned for the board members to give them a moment. They gathered their papers, still whispering about the bombshell they had just heard, then slipped out the door one by one. Soon the room was nearly empty, save for the lingering tension that hung like fog. Grant approached Maya slowly. You did more than expose her, he said. You exposed the rot. Maya nodded, though her pulse thundered beneath her skin. There's something else, she whispered. Something on that USB. I didn't show it yet. Grant paused. How much more? Maya lifted the small device from the table. It felt heavier than any metal should. Enough, she said. Maybe too much. He motioned toward the laptop. Let's see it. Maya plugged the USB back in. The screen blinked awake, and a folder she hadn't opened earlier glowed at the top of the list. Archives 02, confidential. Her hand trembled as she clicked. Inside was another audio file, dated 18 months earlier, months before Maya lost her job. Her throat tightened. She knew this was the piece she'd been too afraid to look at for 2 years. Grant sat beside her, his presence steady. "Whenever you're ready." She pressed play. Andrea's voice flooded the room again, but this time, it was colder, more calculated. There was no nervousness, no fear. Just a woman confident she held power over everyone beneath her. "Maya Thompson is getting too close," Andrea said. "She flagged the inconsistencies. If she keeps digging, she'll expose the entire scheme." A man responded, one Maya recognized immediately, her old manager, the one who had signed the termination notice. "Well, we can't have that. She's smart, smarter than the rest of your team combined." "Yes, and that's the problem," Andrea replied sharply. "She's not afraid to question me, or the numbers. I need her out." "How do you plan to do that?" A long pause. Then Andrea's voice returned, so calm it made Maya's stomach twist. "Simple. We'll say she altered the reports. We'll find the errors in her files, accuse her of negligence, or worse." Maya felt the blood drain from her face. Grant clenched his fists. "Keep playing." The recording continued. "And if she fights it?" the manager asked. "She won't," Andrea said confidently. "She can't afford a lawyer. She's alone. People like her don't win these battles." Grant inhaled sharply. "People like her?" Maya swallowed the ache rising in her chest. "She meant people like me. Because I'm black. Because I'm not from their world." Grant looked at the laptop, his jaw tightening. "She underestimated you." The audio wasn't done. "We'll bury her," Andrea continued. "And if Lawson Tech ever finds out, they'll blame the analyst, not us. You know how these things go." Maya paused the file. Silence filled the room. Heavy, electric, dangerous. Grant leaned back slowly. "She didn't just frame you for negligence." He looked at her. "She stole your career. She stole 2 years of your life." Maya closed her eyes. "I knew they set me up, but hearing them plan it like I was disposable." Grant's voice softened. "You weren't disposable. You were a threat." She drew in a shaky breath. "There's more." She opened a folder labeled Video Feed, and a series of clips appeared, grainy security cam footage from her former office. Each timestamp matched the exact moments the false evidence had been found in her workstation. Grant leaned in. "She planted it. And she recorded herself doing it," Maya whispered. "Probably meant it as leverage, insurance for someone else." Grant cursed under his breath. "She's been playing both sides for years." But then Maya clicked on the last file in the folder, one she hadn't dared open until now. A document, plain text, 3 simple lines. Transfer confirmation source. Lawson Tech. Strategic operations. Authorized by A. Mills attached below it was the routing number for the same offshore account tied to Lawson Tech's competitor. Grant jolted forward in his seat. "She was feeding them our strategies. For years. This is espionage." Maya stared at the screen, her chest tight. "She didn't just sabotage me. She was sabotaging your entire company." Grant rubbed his temples. "She practically opened the gates for our rivals to walk in." "She used me as her scapegoat," Maya said quietly. "And she thought no one would ever listen to a woman like me." Grant turned to her, his expression deepening. "Maya, what do you want to do with this?" The question hit her like a wave, stopping her breath. What did she want? For 2 years, all she had wanted was to survive, to protect her brother, to stay invisible, safe. Now she stood in a boardroom with the power to write the story of her life, but that power terrified her. "I want my name back," Maya said softly. "I want the truth out, and I want her to face what she did." Grant nodded. "You'll have that." She hesitated, then added, But I don't want revenge. I just want to move forward. Her voice cracked at the end. Grant placed a hand on the table between them. Then we'll move forward. Together. But before either of them could say another word, the door burst open. A security guard stepped inside, breathless. Mr. Lawson, Andrea Mills just tried to flee the parking garage. She ran when she saw officers arriving. She's been detained. Maya's heart hammered. Andrea had known. She had known what was on that USB. Grant stood. Bring Maya's evidence to legal immediately. And call the authorities. We're pressing full charges. Yes, sir. As the guard rushed out, Grant turned back to Maya, really seeing her, perhaps for the first time. You're not invisible anymore, he said quietly. And for the first time, Maya let herself believe it. But deep in her chest, beneath the relief, something else stirred. If Andrea had been working with outside forces, if the merger had been compromised long before Maya saw it, then the true enemy wasn't just Andrea. It was someone bigger, someone watching, someone waiting for the perfect moment to strike. And Maya suddenly realized her fight wasn't over. It was about to escalate. The morning after Andrea's arrest broke over Baltimore like a slow sunrise pushing through heavy fog. The air outside Lawson Tech felt strangely still, as though the whole city was waiting for something to shift. For once, Maya's steps weren't hurried or hidden. She entered the building not as a stranger slipping through back hallways, but as someone Grant Lawson himself had asked to return, someone the entire company was suddenly watching. Whispers drifted across the lobby like falling leaves. That's her. The waitress? The one who uncovered everything? No way. Maya kept her eyes forward, but her heart knocked against her ribs. She wasn't used to being seen. Not like this. Not with respect or fear behind the stairs. Grant had told her to meet him on the executive floor. She rode the elevator alone, watching her reflection blur in the mirrored walls. The woman staring back looked exhausted. Yes, but there was something new beneath the weariness. A steadiness she thought she had lost years ago. When the doors opened, Grant was already waiting. He wasn't dressed like a billionaire today. No tailored suit, no expensive cufflinks. Just a crisp shirt, sleeves rolled up as if he'd been pacing for hours. But his eyes, sharp, steady, assessing, were the same. Maya, he said, stepping forward. I'm glad you came. She gave a cautious nod. You said you wanted to talk. Yes, he answered quietly. About what comes next. He led her into his office, a wide room with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the harbor. Morning light spilled across the glass table, illuminating a folder sitting neatly in the center. Maya's name was printed on the front. Her breath caught. Grant took a slow breath, choosing his words with care. Yesterday wasn't just about exposing Andrea. It was about understanding the damage she's caused. To this company. And to you. He paused. And about what we need to rebuild. Maya swallowed hard. I don't know what I can do beyond what I already have. You underestimate yourself, Grant replied. And I won't make that mistake. He opened the folder. Inside was an official contract. Thick paper, embossed Lawson Tech seal, signatures pending. Maya stared. What is this? A job offer, he said. Head of Integrity and Risk. The person responsible for making sure nothing like this ever happens again. You'd lead a team, hire who you trust, build new systems, your systems. You'd have full authority. Her knees softened. She grabbed the back of a chair, steadying herself. Why me? She whispered. Grant looked directly into her eyes. Because you see what others miss. Because you're not afraid to tell the truth, even when you're shaking. Because you saved a $10 billion deal from becoming a catastrophe. And because this company needs someone who isn't blinded by greed or power. She shook her head, emotion burning behind her eyes. But you are not just anything, Grant cut in gently. You're brilliant, and no one will ever bury that again. She felt tears gather but forced them back. It's a lot. I know. His voice softened. But that's not all. He reached for another file, a thinner one, and placed it next to the contract. This is for your brother. Maya froze. Jordan? Yes. Grant stepped back so she could see the paperwork. I spoke with specialists at St. Anne's Cardiac Center. They've reviewed his medical history. His expression softened. They're optimistic, Maya. But he needs treatment. Real treatment. I've arranged funding for everything. Surgery, follow-ups, medication, long-term care. Her hand covered her mouth. Grant, I can't accept that. You can, he said gently. And you will. Not because I'm buying anything from you, not because you owe me, but because you helped me when you had nothing to gain. He paused. Let me return the kindness. Her legs nearly gave out. She sank slowly into a chair, tears blurring the view of the harbor. For months, she had lived with the fear that Jordan's next heartbeat might be his last. She had begged hospitals for extensions, worked double shifts, skipped meals to afford his prescriptions, and now, suddenly, miraculously, the weight was being lifted. I don't know what to say, she whispered. You don't have to say anything, Grant replied. Just breathe. She wiped her eyes, but they filled again. Why are you doing this? People like you don't... Stop, he said gently. Don't put people into boxes. Wealth doesn't make someone good or bad. Choices do. He offered a small, earnest smile. And you made the choice to save my company even after everything you'd been through. Maya's heart twisted. I didn't do it for you, she said honestly. I did it because it was right. Grant nodded. Exactly. A knock came at the door. Grant's assistant peeked in. Sir, there's someone here to see Maya. Maya blinked. Me? A moment later, 3 figures stepped inside. Her elderly neighbor, Mrs. Holcomb, young Jamal from the next apartment, and Mrs. Ruiz, who lived down the hall with her 2 toddlers. They looked stunned and proud. We heard, Mrs. Ruiz said, voice trembling. We saw your name on the news ticker. Jamal grinned widely. You're a legend, Maya. Baby, Mrs. Holcomb said, wiping her eyes with a tissue. You showed them who you are. The room warmed instantly. Humble faces from the neighborhood that had carried her through life's hardest days, standing under the towering ceilings of a billionaire's office. 2 worlds colliding in the most unexpected, beautiful way. Maya's heart swelled until she could barely breathe. Mrs. Ruiz placed a hand on her shoulder. We told you. You're meant for more. Grant watched quietly, moved by the sight. This wasn't just a promotion or a cleared name. It was a homegrown victory, a community rising with her. When they left, Maya turned to Grant. I need to think about the job offer, she whispered. He nodded. Of course. But whatever you decide, Maya, your life is not defined by what was done to you. It's defined by what you get up and do next. She exhaled slowly, her heart still trembling with gratitude, disbelief and fear all tangled together. She whispered. I don't know if I deserve this. Grant stepped closer, his voice steady, unshakable. You don't have to deserve kindness to receive it. You only have to accept the truth. What truth? That you're extraordinary. Maya closed the folder softly, her decision still unspoken but forming slowly, surely, inside her chest. This wasn't revenge. This wasn't a reward. This was a second chance at a life she thought she'd lost forever. But even as warmth settled into her bones, a question lingered in the back of her mind. What happens now? And she knew she wasn't done fighting. Not yet. The morning sunlight washed over West Preston in gentle streaks of gold, turning cracked sidewalks and worn brick buildings into something almost warm. Maya stepped off the bus with a paper bag of groceries in one hand and a mind full of questions. The night before had been overwhelming. Grant's offer, Jordan's treatment, the sudden shift from fear to hope. It felt unreal, like stepping out of a storm only to find the air perfectly still. But life didn't stop just because everything changed. As she walked up the narrow stairs to her apartment, she heard familiar sounds. Mrs. Holcomb sweeping her porch, Mr. Dean arguing with his radio, a toddler laughing somewhere down the hall. This was home. This was the world that had shaped her, held her, tested her. Jordan was sitting on the couch when she walked in, his thin frame wrapped in a blanket. "You're home early?" She set the groceries down and knelt beside him. "How are you feeling?" "Tired," he admitted, "but happy. Mrs. Ruiz said she saw you on the news. Something about Lawson Tech?" Maya hesitated, then sat beside him. "Something happened at work. Something big. And there might be changes coming. Good ones." Jordan's smile was small but real. "You deserve good things." It took everything in her not to cry. "So do you." After making him breakfast and helping him settle back into bed for a nap, Maya stood in the quiet kitchen, hands braced against the counter. The apartment felt too small for everything inside her. Hope, fear, determination. A life-changing offer was sitting in her purse, just waiting to be signed. But before stepping forward, she needed to close a chapter of her past. Hours later, Maya stood in front of Harbor Lane Grill, the restaurant that had witnessed her humiliation. The place where she'd been invisible until she wasn't. The place where the entire story had begun. She walked inside, and it felt oddly smaller than she remembered. The soft jazz played like always. The smell of roasted garlic and warm bread hung in the air. And her coworkers, her friends, looked up in surprise. "Girl, what are you doing here?" Shauna exclaimed, nearly dropping a tray. "You quit last night. Or got promoted? Or something?" A few others gathered around, curious, confused. Maya smiled softly. "I just came to see everyone. To say thank you." Shauna blinked. "For what? You're the one who always helped us. Covered shifts, stayed late, told the manager when customers tried to mess with us." "That's why I'm thanking you, Maya said. "For letting me be part of this place. For treating me like family." The manager, Mr. Everett, emerged from the back. He looked flustered, adjusting his glasses when he saw her. "Maya, I heard things got dramatic last night." "That's one way to put it," she answered gently. He nodded and reached into his pocket, pulling out a white envelope, her final paycheck. "We're proud of you," he said. "We always were." Maya exhaled slowly. "Thank you." She ordered a full meal for herself, something she'd never been able to justify before. A steak, mashed potatoes, and chocolate cake. And as she sat at a booth by the window, sunlight warming her shoulders, she felt something she hadn't felt in years. Sheer, simple peace. No fear, no shame, no one treating her like she didn't belong. When the bill came, she slid 2 crisp 20s into the tip jar for the evening crew. Then she added another, and another. Shauna's eyes widened. "Maya, that's too much." "No," she said softly. "It's not enough." Because she knew too well what it meant to depend on tips just to survive. When she stepped back into the cold air outside, her phone buzzed. It was a message from Grant. Need you at HQ at 3 p.m. first day. Don't be late. GL. A flutter of nerves and excitement danced in her chest. 3 hours later, she stood in front of Lawson Tech's towering glass facade. The building gleamed beneath the winter sky like a monument to ambition. People in suits hurried past her, badges swinging, coffee cups in hand. For the first time, Maya didn't feel like an outsider. Inside, Grant waited near the security desk, hands in his pockets. He smiled when he saw her. You showed up. I said I needed time to think, she replied. I didn't say no. And your answer now? She took a slow breath, then nodded. Yes. His smile deepened, part relief, part admiration. Good. Let's get started. He escorted her to the elevator. As the doors closed, her reflection stared back. Hair pulled neatly into a bun, a pressed blouse, shoulders squared. Not the waitress who kept her head down. Not the analyst who'd been framed. Not the woman who'd spent 2 years hiding. Someone new. Someone stronger. The elevator opened onto a quiet hallway. Grant led her toward a frosted glass door at the end. The plaque beside it read, Director Maya Thompson, Integrity and Risk Division. Her breath hitched. It's yours, Grant said. All of it. Build your team. Rewrite the rules. She opened the door. The office was bright, with wide windows overlooking the city, a desk polished to a shine, and fresh folders stacked neatly. A small vase of white lilies sat in the corner. She touched one gently, surprised. Mrs. Holcomb dropped them off this morning, Grant said with a chuckle. Said you'd need some light in your new space. Warmth spread through her chest. But then Grant's tone shifted. Before you start, there's one last thing. He walked to the window, hands clasped behind him. The city lights flickered far below. The enemy Andrea worked for, the one who almost destroyed my company. They won't go quietly, he said. Your evidence brought down her operation here, but her partner? He's still out there. He's powerful, and he'll come after whoever stands in his way. Maya steadied herself. What are you saying? Grant turned to face her. I'm saying this job will make you a target, just like it made Andrea a weapon. Her heart thudded. This isn't the end of your fight, Maya, he said softly. This is where it becomes a war. She met his gaze, fear tightening in her chest. But beneath it, something fiercer pulsed. Resolve. I didn't come this far to hide again, she whispered. He nodded once, firm, proud, then welcome to the front line. Maya closed the office door behind her, the city stretching out below like a map of possibility and danger. She stepped forward, placing her hand on her desk. Her new beginning, her new battlefield, her new identity, from waitress to warrior. And she was ready. But nothing, no promotion, no new office, no title on a polished glass door, could prepare Maya for the moment that followed. It came at sunset. Baltimore's skyline glowed soft orange, warm light sliding down glass towers and tracing the curve of the harbor like liquid fire. Grant had asked her to meet him on the rooftop of Lawson Tech after her first full day on the job. She expected another briefing, maybe more warnings, maybe even another stack of documents to review. Instead, she found him standing alone near the edge, hands resting on the steel railing, the wind pushing gently against his sleeves. He didn't turn when she stepped out onto the rooftop. Beautiful, isn't it? He said, voice calm. It is, Maya replied softly. Only then did he look at her. Maya, I owe you an apology. She blinked. For what? For that night. He exhaled heavily. At Harbor Lane Grill. I treated you like a joke, like someone whose words didn't matter. I saw you, but I didn't see you. And yet you saved everything I built. Everything my father built before me. Maya stepped closer, the wind carrying the faint scent of the sea. His shoulders, usually squared with confidence, now sagged with something far more human. Regret. You don't have to apologize, she murmured. Yes, I do. His voice deepened. Because that moment changed the way I look at people, at myself, at what matters. He turned fully to her. You told me something that night. 5 words that stopped an entire table cold. She remembered it vividly. The cold silverware, the warm lights, the heavy silence. You're about to lose everything. Grant nodded slowly. Those words saved my company, my employees' jobs, my life's work. His eyes softened. But that wasn't what changed me. He took a small step closer. It was the courage behind the words, the fact that you told the truth even though you knew you'd be mocked, even though you had nothing, and even though I didn't deserve your honesty. Maya felt her breath catch. Grant wasn't speaking like a CEO. He was speaking like a man humbled. This company, he continued, had forgotten its values. I had forgotten mine. You reminded me. Silence settled gently between them, warm, fragile, full. Then he held out a simple white envelope. For you. Her hands trembled slightly as she opened it. Inside was a formal framed certification from the state clearing her name. Official confirmation that she had never committed fraud, never manipulated numbers, never done any of the terrible things Andrea had blamed on her. Her slate, wiped clean. Her life, returned. Her voice shook. I don't know what to say. You don't need to. Grant smiled softly. Just live the life you were meant to have. More papers sat beneath the certificate. Maya's breath caught again. Scholarship fund contract. But not just any fund. The Lorraine Thompson Financial Scholarship, founded by Lawson Tech, for Black students from disadvantaged communities who dream of careers in finance, risk analysis, or data science, named after her mother. The woman who had scrubbed hotel floors, folded laundry, worked double shifts, all so her children could have a future. Tears filled Maya's eyes. Why would you do this? Grant rested his hands on the railing again, looking out at the harbor as twilight softened the sky. Because good people decide what kind of world we live in, he said quietly. Your mother raised one of the best. Her knees weakened as emotion surged through her chest. Gratitude, disbelief, healing. Maya, Grant continued softly, your first sentence that night did more than save my empire. He turned to her again. It saved me. Her breath trembled. Your courage, he said. Your honesty, your kindness. It reminded me of who I want to be, and who this company must become. Maya stepped closer, wiping her eyes. I didn't expect any of this. That's the thing about truth, he replied. It changes everything. A long moment passed. The city lights shimmered below them like stars scattered across the earth. You know, Maya whispered, people laughed at me. They laughed at where I worked, where I lived. They thought the worst moments of my life defined me. Grant shook his head gently. They forgot something important. What's that? That past hardship, he said, doesn't make someone small. It makes them extraordinary. Maya let out a soft, shaky laugh. Extraordinary is a big word for someone who used to hand out coffee and hope nobody needed refills. Extraordinary, Grant repeated firmly, is exactly the word. Maya looked out at the city that had tested her, battered her, and finally, miraculously, lifted her. Her life had cracked open in ways she could never have expected, Pain had brought her to her knees, but truth had brought her back to her feet. She wasn't hiding anymore. She wasn't running. She wasn't invisible. She was Maya Thompson, a woman who had turned humiliation into courage, kindness into power, truth into justice, a waitress into a warrior. And now, standing beneath a sky slowly turning violet, she finally felt the weight of her journey settle into something beautiful, calm, steady, strong. She turned back to Grant. "Thank you," she whispered. "Not just for this, for listening." He nodded. "Thank you for speaking." They stood side by side as the last light faded, the scholarship documents fluttering softly in the evening breeze. Maya placed her hand over them protectively. This wasn't just a fund. It was a promise. To her community, to her mother, to herself. The city glowed beneath them, alive, hopeful, shimmering like 1,000 tiny futures waiting to be lived. Maya lifted her face to the wind. She had gotten her name back, her story back, her future back. And now she would make sure others got theirs too. All because one billionaire mocked a waitress, and her first sentence left him frozen. If only he knew how that moment would change them both forever. If this story touched you even a little, drop a simple comment below, even just a 0 or 1, to let me know you're here, listening, and feeling every step of these journeys. Your small comment helps this community grow stronger with every story. And if you'd like to follow more powerful tales of resilience, kindness, and life-changing twists, make sure you subscribe to the channel. Hit the notification bell so you never miss the next chapter. Your next favorite story is already on the way.